we finally get to a movie that Brad hasn't seen. Beards and Flicks, baby.
Okay, guys, we are back with another podcast episode. We're sitting here drinking some amazing bourbon, and we're going to be talking about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. My first time viewing this movie. Plus, it's an 80s movie. It's John Hughes, John Candy, Steve Martin. How did I not see this movie?
I don't know.
I posted about it on Facebook, as I like to do, and so many of my friends were commenting.
I saw all those comments. I was
how
reading.
have you not seen this?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're going to love it. All this stuff. Everyone was right. I loved it, and we'll get to it.
And the cool thing about this movie is you're actually going to hear this the day before Thanksgiving. And this is a Thanksgiving-themed movie because the whole plot is...
This is the only Thanksgiving movie.
You're right.
I don't think there's any other movie that's just about Thanksgiving.
I tried to pick one because I knew that the day this was going to fall was the day before Thanksgiving.
Yep.
And this is the only one I could find.
Yeah.
So
I want the listeners to know that this is not fact-checked. We are speaking from our hearts and speaking from our minds, and we're looking at trivia from IMDb. This is more of a conversation about movies, less than a review podcast, right? This is just a couple of guys that love movies and they just want to talk about them, really. If you guys know that we say something that's incorrect, please let us know. Like, fact check us. beardsandflickspodcast@gmail.com. We want to hear from you. Let us know what we said incorrectly, or let us know whatever.
So I watched this movie again after, numerous viewings a few nights ago to prepare for this. And I'm looking at all this. It's during the winter time. It's Thanksgiving. You're dealing with a lot of snow and ice. Now this makes me think of a story where I almost died in the snow and ice. Don't just say to my death story.
I'm sorry.
I almost died.
I was pulling up IMDb. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine.
I legit want to know this story.
So this isn't tied into holiday, but it is tied into snow and a specific scene in the film. You know what? I quit this podcast again.
You quit every podcast.
I quit every week.
All right.
I come back. No, but
don't let me walk over this.
No.
Please start over.
So what happens? Okay, so this film, one of the first memories of me almost dying, I was reminded of in this film because there is a scene in this film that we'll get to later. It has to do with a car on the road in icy weather or slick road conditions. My story doesn't tie into holidays, but it does tie into being in a car on slick road conditions. So,
which is a pretty big moment in this movie.
It is, and so I'm dating this girl at this time. This is winter 2015, 2016, and we had this huge ice storm in Tyler. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
But everything was shut down because we don't ever really get weather like that. And I had plans to see my girlfriend at that time the next day. She lives in Longview, so it's about a 45-minute drive. Obviously, I wake up the next day, everything's covered in snow and ice.
Just like we all did.
Yeah. And she's still like, well, you can still come, just drive slower, be careful. So I'm thinking you would risk my life to come see you and I could die on the way.
Are you going to smash this girl?
I was dating her at the time.
You don't have to answer. First of all, I don't say that.
When you said that, I was like, wait a second. You're using that word?
Yeah. Second of all, that was very personal. I should not have said that.
No, I was like, oh, I can't answer that. And so reluctantly, I decide to, traverse this weather. And reluctantly, going to see her was beginning to be something of a thing in this relationship.
You were doing things more reluctantly, like
reluctantly
frequently?
going to yeah.
Okay, so the reluctantness was becoming a common theme.
Yeah, it wasn't just because of the weather. It was because I just was trying to find a way out of this relationship. A whole different topic, which I'm sure we'll cover during one of these other rom-coms we do in the future. But I decided to go out there, drive super slow, and make it, obviously. And as the end of the night comes, because this is during the day, she said, well, why don't you just spend the night, because now that it's nighttime, anything that was melted is going to be iced over. Yep. I was like, nah, I think I'm going to go ahead and go. I'm going to chance it.
How much longer after that did they all break up?
A month?
Oh, damn.
Maybe 2.
You held on for a little while.
I did. Well, we broke up and made up like 10 times that year.
Oh, it was one of those.
And it was towards the end of this. Yeah, so...
You were Ross and Racheling it.
100%. I got that reference. And so I decided to make my way out of there like an escape.
Yeah.
It was kind of like an escape.
Yeah.
And I'm crossing over this bridge. And obviously at night, with your lights on, you can't really see ice. They call it black ice because you can't tell. And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder how slick the road really is. I'm going about 45 on this bridge. To the left and to the right, there are no guardrails. And on both sides, there are deep ravines. So if I go down either one of these, I'm stuck. At best, I'm stuck in a car. At worst, I get stuck in a car that's on fire. And at double worst, I get impaled by a tree, stuck in a car on fire. This is real. Don't laugh.
I know. No. I'm not laughing. I'm like, oh my God. Like, that's so many bad things.
It's aggressive, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm thinking in my head. But I want to see how slick the roads are, so that when I get back home, I can say, hey, roads weren't that bad. So it's kind of like a spite thing. And I going 45 on this bridge, which, by the way, if it's iced over, the bridge is the worst place to try what I'm about to say. Mm-hmm. I shake the wheel left and right, really aggressive. And my car does a full 360 on this bridge. Not off to the ravine.
Just like this movie.
Just like the movie, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, it's, 9, 10 o'clock at night, so it's pitch black.
Yeah.
There's no one else out. And like I said, there's deep ravines on both sides. So if my car ends up on either one, no one's even going to know I'm there. Mm. And I'm just curious. I like to say I'm really dumb and curious a lot of times. I want to just see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's a test theory. I'm like a scientist. And so I swerve the wheel, both directions, left and right. And the car does a full 360 to where I'm facing the same direction, but in the other lane. And it happens so quick, I don't even have time to freak out. Because when I come back...
You gotta turn around.
Yeah, to a full stop, I look and I say, oh, so that's what happens if I swivel the wheel on an icy road. This is real true story. And I look in the distance, and there's a car, like, in the distance, I see headlights coming.
Yeah.
I said, man, let me get out of this road before, somebody hits me off the side of the road.
Yeah.
And I carefully make my way home. And the next day, she's like, so how did it go? And I was like, oh, it went great. The drive was great. Yeah, I'm not telling you anything.
I almost died, but whatever.
Yeah.
I totally remember that winter storm.
It was bad.
Yeah, but I was living in Flint at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, some of us drove into work, and then we found out that I was working at Brochures at the time. Okay. And some of us drove into work, and some of us didn't risk it. Yeah. But I drove in, and it was fine. But then they told us at 10 o'clock to everybody go home. Everybody who was there to go home. Yeah. It was crazy. That was a crazy storm.
So you had been at work probably as long as it took you to drive to work that day.
Yeah. And then in 2016, it happened again. Mm-hmm. And that's when I sat at home, and over the course of 2 or 3 days, I was living with Daniel, and The Marvelous Miss Maisel had just started, and I binged the entire show. Wow. And it's such a good show.
Was that one of your first moments of binging a show back then?
Oh, no.
No?
No, I've definitely done that before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I binged Breaking Bad. Okay. I waited till Breaking Bad was done.
Ooh, that's a triple B. That's
binged Breaking Bad.
That's not alliteration. That's come on, give it to me. You know what it is.
Triple-ration?
Fine, triple-ration. You heard it first on Beards and Flicks, baby. So you talk about binging. We're kind of segueing. We're still going to come back to this. We promise, guys. I'm talking to my dad last night. You're familiar with Quibi, correct? Yeah. You know what Quibi is? Uh-huh. For listeners who don't know, Quibi was a streaming platform designed specifically for mobile devices, cell phones.
Quick piece of trivia. Reese Witherspoon's husband is the main guy behind Quibi.
Really? Mm-hmm. Well, they made divorce after this story.
Oh, no.
So the platform launched in April, which was, right at the beginning of the pandemic, so it was perfect timing. Mm-hmm. And the whole concept behind Quibi is to stream content in a shorter time frame, right?
Kind of on the Vine idea,
right?
Right.
Like you got TV shows and movies on there with A-list actors.
I mean, major.
7
Anna
minutes
Kendrick's got a movie on there.
Yeah, Kevin Hart's got a movie on there. So I mean, you had A-list actors.
Die Hard? Is that what?
Die Hard was the one, yeah. And so these movies and TV shows are 7 minutes at length, no more than that. And I just found out about a week ago that they declared bankruptcy. And they're done because they had 52 million people sign up for the free trial. They only retained 72,000 people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So you're talking about a drop off of about 99%.
Return.
Yeah. And obviously you talk about the paid prescription or paid subscription was $5.99.
Yeah.
Times 72,000. I can't do math that well.
Yeah.
But you're not even breaking even with that number.
That's crazy.
So Quibi, if you had it, guys, it's no more.
Yeah, it's gone. It went the way of the Vine.
Yeah.
Because Vine did not last very long. It was super cool.
Right.
You know, like, how long was it? Like 6 seconds?
Yeah.
Each video was 6 seconds. And we got a lot of funny things out of Vine.
Right.
My son and I like to frequently watch the best of Vine. And, you know, one of the guys we got from Vine was Storytime.
Yes.
Remember that guy?
Yes, I do.
Kid? I say kid because I'm old.
Well, it's fine.
Yeah, sure. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, 1987. I had a lot of fun watching this movie.
I'm glad to hear you say that.
I chose to watch it Wednesday nights. I got off work and I went home with the intention of just watching this and just chilling out. I ordered some sushi. It was cold and rainy. It was gross outside.
Did you know this was a John Hughes movie?
Yeah, I did. Okay. But again, it was just like I have celebrated every other one of his movies except for this one. I don't know why.
Well, this is the only one, ironically enough, that deals with adults.
Sure.
All of his other movies were kids.
Maybe that's why.
Right, could be.
Know? Because it includes so many of my favorite actors. You know? Steve Martin, John Candy.
The late
Let's just
great
go
John
through the
Candy.
list. Michael McKean, Kevin Bacon. What's up with that little thing?
Another cameo, yeah.
What? Like I wanted to, literally at the back of my mind, the whole movie, I was going, are we going to see his character again?
Oh.
Like, maybe at the very end, another funny little thing with Kevin Bacon?
Yeah.
But no, just that beginning, like, was it a John Hughes, like, did he owe him a favor or something? Like, I don't know why.
I feel like it had to be something like that.
Like, I don't know why that little bit happened, but it was totally at the height of Kevin Bacon fame.
Agreed.
Right?
I would love to have seen him at the end. Steve Martin has to go back to work, and then Kevin Bacon somehow is fighting him for the same taxi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be a cool bookend if they did that.
Agreed.
Right?
I like that.
Like Dylan Baker, like so many big character actors. Martin Ferrero, like Larry Hankin, so many of these people you've seen. You may not know their names,
right,
but you've seen their characters that they have portrayed on film, including Edie McClurg, who was Ferris Bueller's principal's assistant, or the secretary.
Right.
Remember, she's pulling out the pencils from her hair, and she keeps finding more pencils in her hair. But just like some major actors in this. This is the first time we've seen teamed up on screen with Steve Martin and John Candy.
Yeah.
Right? A young John Candy. I loved his character.
He's one of those guys that's it's hard to not love him.
Right.
He's so lovable.
This movie is so big that they even remade it with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis. The movie called Due Date.
Yeah.
So I had seen Due Date, and people were telling me this was based on Planes, Trains, and I've never seen. And I was like, I've never seen that, so I just kind of wrote it off. I like this movie so much more than Due Date.
Same, I do too.
Due Date was a modern reboot.
Yeah.
Would you say that?
Yeah, I would. The reason that RDJ is headed home is because his wife's pregnant.
Yep.
But it's the same concept. Yeah, he's trying to get from A to B, and this chaos happens, and chaos ensues, and he runs into Zach Galifianakis, who just throws this whole thing off the rails.
As much as I love RDJ, as much as I love Zach Galifianakis, I think it could have been better. Wasn't it Todd Phillips?
It was.
Yeah, Todd Phillips directed it, so the Hangover fame.
Yeah.
So he's kind of familiar with the road trip movie.
Right.
And that's probably why he was awarded that or was asked to direct that or whatever. So, Planes, Trains, Automobiles, tell me why you love this movie so much.
So, I love the holiday season, just in general.
Absolutely.
It's something that I don't think I'll ever not love, because I just feel like I'm always going to be a child at heart, no matter how old I am.
Right.
I'm always gonna love holiday season. You got Thanksgiving coming up, which is like family time. I love family time, probably more than anything else.
So we're recording this the day after Halloween.
Yeah.
The very first day of November. And my feelings towards this season are the same every year.
Me too.
Right? Halloween comes and goes. I had fun last night with Rim. He was here for the weekend. He was really only here for 24 hours, and I took him trick or treating. We ended the night by watching the new version of The Witches.
How was that?
Robert Zemeckis directed on HBO Max. Really good.
Okay.
We both loved it. In fact, like I was saying off mic, Remy kept telling me while we were watching it, man, I love this movie. He'd never seen it. He'd never even seen the original. Like, he just knew, he was aware of the original because we were literally on Netflix.
Okay.
And we were looking for a movie to close out Halloween with. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do. We go home after having some family time with his cousins and whatever.
Right.
Went home, decided to watch a movie. We were on Netflix because he said, Daddy, I want to watch The Addams Family. I get on the search and Witches pops up. And he goes, I want to see that movie. And I said, oh, wait. I want to show you the new one because I've been waiting to watch it until you were with me.
Okay.
Which I was. And we got on HBO Max and we watched it. And it's a reboot, a retelling, a reimagining, whatever you want to say. Really well done.
Yeah. The
visual effects were really good. All the kids are turned into mice. That's the whole story, right?
Yeah.
They kind of did a race swap on the story.
Yeah.
So the main, one of the main actors is Octavia Spencer.
Right.
And she plays the grandmother of the little boy who gets turned into a mouse.
Okay.
They see a witch, and I'm not going to give the whole movie away, but if you've seen the original, you kind of know the storyline, right?
Yeah.
But it was a really well done reboot.
So my Halloween night didn't go quite as well as yours. I was at home with my dad, and I also was scrolling through Netflix, and we ended up on Hurricane Heist. Have you seen?
Okay, I've seen that on Netflix, but I didn't see it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's in my list, but not anymore.
Oh, no.
It's a Rob Cohen directed film who directed The Fast and the Furious, the first one. So this one stars Maggie Grace.
Oh.
Yeah, and Toby Kebbell. If you've seen the newer Fantastic Four, he was Dr. Doom. He was in Rock and Roller. You've seen Rock and Roller?
I haven't.
You haven't seen Rock? Mm-hmm. But you love Guy Ritchie.
I know. It's one of those things. Like, I love John Hughes, never seen Planes, Trains.
Okay.
I love Guy Ritchie, never seen Rock and Roller.
I would recommend that one to you, since you're a Guy Ritchie guy.
It has been recommended to me before.
Okay.
By somebody I really care about, so I'm gonna take your opinion and her opinion and watch it.
Gotcha. So yeah, we ended up on Hurricane Heist. It kind of reminded me of a modern day Hard Rain.
Okay.
Christian Slater and Morgan Freeman. Have you seen that movie?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that. So it's instead of a dam bursting and all this rain, it's a hurricane. Okay. Biggest one on record. By the way, all these hurricane movies, it's always the biggest one on record.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
Same thing with Twister movies.
Same thing, yeah. Needless to say, it wasn't the best of films, and I feel bad because I feel like I owe him a redo because I picked it.
Your dad, you mean?
Yeah. I owe my pops a redo, so Dad, I'm sorry about that. So yeah, my night didn't go as well as yours.
I'm sorry, man.
But I'm really happy that you got to see your kid, even though it was only for a day, and you got to spend the Halloween with him.
Yeah, it was great. So let's go back to Planes, Trains, because you and I both. I feel like you and I both have ADD.
We do. So here's the thing about this movie.
I'm diagnosed ADHD.
Oh, so you're like legit.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I really started having ADD-like tendencies until maybe the last couple of years. Now there's also a remake in development with Will Smith and Kevin Hart, and I'm here for it. I'm all in.
Are you?
Yeah. You're not?
I don't know.
Okay.
Like, I don't have. You have a lot of really good memories with this movie.
Yeah.
Do you watch it every year?
I do, actually, yeah. It's one of the few movies that I actually watch yearly.
Okay. Mm-hmm. This will be one of the movies that I return to every year.
Okay.
Around this time.
Right.
Right. So, like, after Halloween, or even around Halloween, whatever.
Yeah, because you're gearing up for the next Halloween, which is Thanksgiving.
Exactly. You're gearing up to the next season, which I start watching Christmas movies around Thanksgiving.
Same.
And I'll probably, like, there's like 10 or 15 that I watch.
Yeah.
I love Christmas movies.
So you're talking about that. This is the first we're talking about it, so it's on air. But I really hope we do, for December, every week in December, I hope we do a Christmas themed movie for the whole month of December.
Why don't we just do that?
I think we should do that.
This is our podcast.
We can do whatever we want. We are in control.
As soon as we get that, the sponsorship from IMDb, we'll pour some money into this podcast. And,
there you go.
Yeah.
So, are you the guy that puts up the tree on Thanksgiving Day? Do you do that?
No, the day after Thanksgiving is when I do it normally.
Okay.
And it's a big deal between my son and I. So I'm gonna wait because my son's gonna be here the entire month of December.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna wait till December 1st to put that up with him.
Let me just say,
or whatever that day is, whatever the first time.
Yeah. I'm so excited you get your kid for a whole month.
It's gonna be great. Dude. I can't wait.
I think I'm gonna go ahead and say this on air. I think I'm like you and Remy's number one fan.
Oh man, I appreciate that.
Yeah, because whenever you post stuff and he's in town, I'm all over it, man. I love that stuff.
It's always a red letter day when he's here, and we do something fun and memorable. And even when he's here for a month, like we're going to do, and it's December. Yeah, we're gonna do all the fun Christmas things, right? Like take him to the Christmas light viewings and all the Christmas movies or whatever. It's gonna be great.
Well, yesterday I saw
decorating the house.
One of your stories. You said you hadn't done this in a while, and it was him playing with Legos.
Man, we haven't played Legos. Okay, the Lego table that my mom and dad built for us to play on was built when I lived in my house in Flint, which has been. It's did your turn to do it this time. It's been 3 years since I've lived in that house.
Wow.
That when I sold my house, that Lego table, which is a simple plywood and 2x4 table.
Right. Yeah, you showed me.
But it's got drawings on it from Remy when he was little, at little crayon drawings or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it was built literally for the room that I had for us to play Legos in.
Okay.
The little office study room at my house. And so when I sold that house, that table went into storage, and it's been in storage until the current apartment that I'm in now, which I've only been in for 3 months, 2-3 months.
Yeah.
So now it's in his room, and we are playing on that Lego table this weekend for the first time in years.
That is really cool.
And I built a Lego shark that he got for his birthday in August, which we haven't even opened it out of the box yet. Like it was a really big deal that we were sitting there doing that, and we played for like 3 hours.
So let me say this real quick. Let me just interject. One, the bourbon kicked in.
Oh, hello.
This is gonna be a great podcast. Anyway, because it's us. Two, one of the reasons that I felt like I'm you and Remy's biggest fan is because I've had an idea that I want to do a documentary for a long time.
Oh, cool.
I've been trying to create this idea, think about something I haven't seen in a doc. And one that I haven't seen, and I know a lot of, is single fathers, single dads. And like the struggles they go through, how they are with their kids.
I mean, how single fathers are treated by the state of Texas.
Yeah. So it's something that I want to bring to light because I feel like dads don't get the respect they deserve, single dads.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you know, going through this process, we won't talk about it because it's personal, but the legal system normally sides with the mother.
It definitely does.
And I really hate that.
Especially in Texas.
Yeah. So I would even want to highlight the amazing single fathers that I know, and you're on that list of like 3 or 4 that I know on a personal level, and it's one of the documentaries that I want to shoot first. And just to get your story out there because I think it's important to show the world that single dads should be looked at in a different light than what is portrayed, right?
Yeah. No, I agree.
So I
fully endorse this movie, whenever it gets made, and I have several friends that are single dads that would love to talk to you about the struggles we go through. Because
so many people think of single dads as like the deadbeat dad, and you are the exact opposite of that.
I appreciate that.
100%, and I'm not the only one that would believe that.
I'm not the only one that's like that either. Like there's more of us out there,
right? I have to believe there's more good single dads out there than there are not.
Yeah.
So a little tangent, but planes, trains, and automobiles.
Not a bad tangent because of his relationship with his family, and he's away from his family, and he misses some things, right? The play that his daughter does. He's calling his wife, and they're both laying there and they can't talk to each other.
Right.
This was before cell phones, right?
Yeah,
so
before.
This was him like finding a payphone and trying to call, and didn't have the change or whatever. Just the struggles he went through to try to talk to his wife and keep his relationship going.
There's a scene to speak to that towards the end where he finally gets on the last train to go home. He's almost there.
My gosh!
And it's him thinking of images of his kids and his wife. I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that because, like you said, it speaks to the fact that he's a family man. Even though he doesn't work close to home, he's a family man first.
Totally. And you believe that about John Candy's character.
Oh, my gosh. It was a big reveal towards the end of the film that...
I was putting the pieces together before the reveal.
Really?
Not to show that I'm perfect and great at watching movies.
Yeah.
But I was like, there are some things that he said that, much like in the montage of Steve Martin's character remembering the things that John Candy said prior, I did that. And I was like, she's not alive, is she?
Wow.
And, the one big line that I remember was that he's been on the road for years.
Yeah.
And I was like, years? Like you mean that?
Right.
Like you mean that? You're not using a funny, cool way of saying how you've been on the road for years.
It wasn't just a throwaway line.
You've been on the road. You haven't been home in years.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, and when the reveal happened, I was of course shocked.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was just drinking wine, and I was just like emotional, and I was
you
like,
were
oh
all
my
your
god,
feelings.
oh my god, yeah. So let's just go through it. Like 87. Let's talk about the cinematic universe.
Yeah. So you've got Princess Bride. Mm-hmm. Full Metal Jacket. Have you seen Full Metal Jacket?
Absolutely.
Okay. Dirty Dancing.
Yep.
The Lost Boys. Mm-hmm. Have you seen The Lost Boys?
Yep. I'm not a big fan.
Okay. Is it because of the horror themes?
No, it's just one of my friends really, really loves it. We just had a conversation about that movie just the other day. He wants to come on the podcast and talk about it. Jamie Whitley.
Okay.
He loves that movie. I'm on the fence about it.
Yeah, see, I'm on the fence too, so...
I think it was I just don't think it was really well done.
Was it a misfire? I think it was a misfire.
Yeah. Great concept.
Yeah.
Not well executed. Yeah.
And then, of course, they did a sequel with Jason Patrick.
Yeah.
So, by the way...
When they do the sequels like that, it really bothers me.
This is a callback to one of our older podcasts.
Okay.
We're talking about sequels. I think it was Die Hard: The Vengeance.
Okay.
We mentioned actors who do sequels and actors who don't come back. And I mentioned... Speed, yes. Yeah. And Speed 2, Cruise Control, was Jason Patrick. Yeah. Is he the sequel?
Oh, you guys want to do it? I'll do it.
yeah. I'm broke. I need a payday.
Right. I mean...
Keanu said no, I am down.
Yeah, and Jason Patrick has the look, but not the skills, in my opinion.
Agreed.
I don't think he's a good actor.
I don't think so either.
He's a B actor.
He's a B-list actor, for sure. He's one of those, like, late Saturday night, like, oh, how'd this get made? Movies you just happen to watch because it's late.
Yep.
The Lost Boys, the first Lethal Weapon.
Oh.
I mean, come on.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first Hellraiser, which I know you didn't see.
I haven't seen any of those.
I probably won't even ever cover that because it's super twisted. I think S&M, lots of leather and chains, really weird. Oh. Yeah. Don't owe me like that, like I'm into it. I'm not into it. And we have the first Predator.
Oh,
a classic.
Yeah, huge.
And the first RoboCop, which also was a classic.
Yeah, right.
So a lot of classics come out in '87.
Yep.
And this being the only Thanksgiving themed film, it deserves the title classic as well. It belongs on this list, right?
Yeah.
Earlier you named out the cast list. And you mentioned Kevin Bacon, who's only in one scene.
Yeah, a few minutes.
Yeah, and it's in the beginning when Steve Martin's trying to rush to the airport. He has a 6 o'clock flight. Yeah. But he's at work.
Well, so the movie opens up with a really funny, like, boardroom type meeting. And they're, like, waiting for the boss to make a decision on some sort of ad campaign.
Yeah, I guess it's a marketing, yeah.
Yeah. So the boss, he's chewing on his glasses. He's sitting way back in his chair with all these different mock-ups of a marketing thing. Right. And, like, Steve Martin's mouthing to Ferris Bueller's dad.
It is.
Across the table, he goes, he's like, I have got to go. He's like pointing at his watch. He's like, I've got to go. I've got to catch a plane. And, the boss sees this conversation happening from way across the room. That scene really reminded me of Christmas Vacation.
Yes.
Which is another John Hughes movie.
Yes.
And the whole, like, the boss being really far away from the camera. And it also reminded me of the Hudsucker Proxy.
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
Have you ever seen the Hudsucker Proxy?
It sounds...
A Coen Brothers movie starring Tim Robbins?
No, I have not.
We're definitely going to talk about this movie.
Oh, here we go.
It's a movie I watch every year.
And the first.
So we've got to have to... Whatever. Oh my gosh. There's a big boardroom scene, and it's very long... like a long lens type scene, and the boss is way down at the other end of the table. And that's kind of what this scene in this movie wasn't that exaggerated. Yeah, but definitely, like you can tell because of how far away from the boss Steve Martin is. Steve Martin really isn't that important.
No, not at all.
He's in this meeting, so he's some importance.
But he's at the end of the table.
But he's at the end of the table with the Ferris Bueller's dad, and they're probably not. They're the grunt work.
They wouldn't have to be there probably.
Yeah,
but yeah.
But it's time for him to leave and go see his family. And what happens?
So eventually, the boss is making a decision, like you said, and they cut to Steve Martin talking to Ferris Bueller's dad on the way to the elevator. He says, all of that, just for him to say, let's reconvene after the holiday.
Yeah.
Which is, by the way, I come from the corporate world,
same.
Being in accounting. That is exactly how it would happen.
It's happened to me. I've been in a meeting like that before. Yeah.
And you're trying to rush out, right?
Yeah, and I worked my ass off trying to get this project done.
Yeah.
And we're in the meeting and it's like, oh, let's just talk about this after the holiday weekend. And I'm like, what? Or whatever.
All that for nothing. And you know they've been in that office for at least an hour.
Oh, or more.
Before.
Yeah. So he's rushing.
He's rushing trying to get a cab because he has a 6 o'clock flight. First of all, I don't care where you are in New York. If you're trying to go to JFK or LaGuardia, your flight's at 6.
You ain't making it.
On 2 days from Thanksgiving, you're not going to get there if you have to work the full day.
Yeah.
No, there's no way. So Steve Martin's trying to rush to catch a cab last minute to get to the airport by 6. And by the way, this, like I said, against New York, you want to get there at least 2 hours before.
And he's getting out of work after 5.
After 5.
He has no time.
His boss held him up after 5.
It would stress me out to be in his shoes.
Well, for me, watching that scene, even I've watched it a million times, I still get stressed. Yeah. And so he's trying to find a cab with a million other New Yorkers that are leaving the office.
Yeah, doing the same thing.
And I think Ferris's dad even says, you're never going to be able to hail a cab at this hour.
Right.
And it cuts to Steve Martin and a line of people in suits hailing a cab.
Yep.
And he sees Kevin Bacon across the street, who gives him a cutting eye look.
Yeah, they make eyes at each other.
From across the street.
Yeah.
And they see one cab that just turned its lights on saying it's ready for service.
Yep.
Kevin Bacon cuts his eyes at Steve. Steve cuts his eyes at Kevin.
Yep.
And they both take off racing.
Kicks up.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. And they're running, and Steve Martin's got a suitcase in one hand and another travel bag in the other.
It's like a fast dolly shot.
Yeah,
tracking along the road.
And Kevin Bacon gets held up by a food truck.
Yeah.
So Steve gets the lead, thinks he's going to get the cab.
Yeah.
And right before he gets to the cab, a few feet away, he trips over something, falls flat on his face.
Almost gets ran over.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Kevin Bacon gets to the cab, and he kind of gives like a little nod, like, well, I beat you, see ya.
Yeah.
And that's the intro to Steve Martin and John Candy.
We learn a lot about Steve Martin's character in this whole scene.
We really do.
You know? He's uptight.
He is.
He... has a certain way about how he does things.
Would you say that he might be the embodiment of white privilege?
I think. Oh, okay. So I have heard said this before, and I believe this about John Hughes. John Hughes knows how to show the human condition.
Oh, okay.
He does it in every one of his films, right? There's some sort of certain situation he's focused on, whether it's in teens in high school or a popular kid. Or in high school, or Christmas Vacation. Yeah. That whole thing. There's a certain situation, certain type of person he's focusing on, or stereotypes that he's focused on in his movies, right? And yes, to your point, I believe that he embodies the uptight white business person. Yeah.
White collar.
In the 80s.
Absolutely,
in the late 80s,
100%. And in New York, too, it's perfect setting.
Yeah, working for a pretty obvious, from what I understand, a pretty big marketing firm in New York, right? Absolutely. In a high rise in New York. He's got a 3-piece suit on. He paid $75 to a guy to get a cab, and he didn't get it.
And the great line about that is, he offers $50 to the guy.
If you're willing to pay $50,
you'd obviously pay $75. So pompous and arrogant.
And I was like, oh my god.
Now, guys, thankfully, you are not like that. You are the non-epitome of white privilege. Well, that's why we're friends.
Yeah, that's exactly why we're friends.
To be serious, but so he trips over John Candy's luggage case.
Giant case.
It's huge.
Yeah,
and
I could fit in that case.
Yeah, you really could. I could. I'm 5'3", and if you didn't know, listeners, I'm 5'3". And so
the listeners sitting at home listening to us. Oh, I thought he sounded short.
Yeah, well, your voice doesn't have enough bass. You have to be no more than 5'3". Yeah. On a good day, 5'4".
And I'm almost 6 foot.
Yeah, which is insane to me. Yeah. I look up to all my friends, literally and figuratively. But anyway, so he loses the cab to Kevin Bacon. Yep. And he quickly tries to recover and find another cab somewhere in the sea of cabs and sea of people trying to get in the cab. Yeah. He finds one because he sees a guy about to get in, and he offers to pay the guy $50, like we said. And then he jokes about, well, if you pay $50, you pay $75. He pays the guy $75. But while he's making the transaction,
his
somebody else gets in the cab from the other side. You see the trunk go in the trunk.
Yeah.
It's closed.
Yep.
And as he pays the guy leaves. Steve Martin turns to the cab. It's already gone.
It's gone.
It's peeled off.
You didn't even know that it's
You didn't even know.
Yeah, and I was so frustrated.
Me too.
At seeing that.
Every year I watch it, I still get frustrated.
Yeah.
And so he chases the cab.
Yeah.
And which in New York you could do because in that part of New York, it's every block is a street light.
Yeah.
So he catches the cab, opens the door, and he yells at John Candy. John Candy's his face, the little dolly zoom to his face, and he freaks out, and the cabbie just peels off, and that's it.
Man.
No more cabs.
Yeah.
It's a great intro, like you said, to his character.
To their relationship.
Yeah,
too.
it is.
It speaks a lot to what happens, what's going to happen. Man, I mean, I love, when I see movies with cool titles, when I'm watching the movie, I kind of say the title in my head over and over. To see if it like matches what we're seeing, to see if it matches the story.
Right.
Because I think the title of a movie says a lot.
It's important.
Or it could not say a lot. It could only say just enough to get you interested in the movie.
That's the hook. And you love hooks.
This movie's called Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Perfectly.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's what happens. Like, he goes to the airport. He gets on the plane. His seat has been changed.
Oh, he of course he ordered first class ticket.
Yeah.
And then something happens where the stewardess is telling him, well, you all we have is coach.
Yeah.
And he's arguing with the guy.
He's upset.
Yeah, and that's why I call him out white privilege right there for sure. And he ends up finding his seat.
Yeah.
And who's next to his... So first of all, he gets the middle seat, which is the worst seat in the plane.
Horrible.
If you're
I
a
never
three-seater.
choose the middle seat.
And who's on the left side of that seat?
Yeah, John Candy.
Yeah.
So they're sitting there, and John Candy's a big guy.
Yeah.
You know, and Steve Martin's a tall guy.
Right.
So you have these two large-bodied people in a very small 80s plane.
Have you flown often?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, me being 5'3", this comes into play. When I sit on a plane, no matter what seat it is, I feel tight in the seat, and I'm only 5'3".
Right.
So I can only imagine tall Steve Martin and large John Candy next to each other. And there's a third guy on this side of Steve Martin.
The older man.
Now, do you recognize him?
I do. What was he from?
From Home Alone.
That's what it was. Yes, yes.
Another John Hughes film.
I knew it. Yeah, exactly. John Hughes commonly uses the same talent pool. Like he has... You know, like, for instance, Ben Stein is in this movie.
Yeah.
Who is the teacher from Ferris Bueller. Ferris Bueller's dad's in this movie, right? The old man from Home Alone that we just talked about. Like, you'll see, that's a common theme in a lot of his movies. So you have the old man, you have Steve Martin in the middle, you have John Candy, and John Candy takes off his socks and shoes.
That's something that I would definitely complain to the stewardess about.
I would be so... I don't know. I can't even say what I would do.
Perturbed was a good word.
Perturbed, yeah. Which is a word my dad uses. You know, that's such a strange thing to have happen.
It is.
John Candy takes off his shoes, which I wouldn't do.
Never.
Just my shoes, I wouldn't do.
No.
Then he takes off his socks.
He sure does. Yeah. It's super unclean, unsanitary.
It's very unclean and unsanitary.
I mean, obviously now we're in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
But
it kind of reminded me of Die Hard when that guy's like, you know, you take your shoes off and you make balls. You make
fists with your toes.
Fists with your toes.
Have you done that, by the way? Because of that movie, I've done it.
Since I've seen that movie, when I go home, I do that.
Okay.
I've never done it on a plane.
Oh, yeah, no.
I'm not taking my shoes off in a plane.
Ever. I hate taking my shoes off going through security.
In the airport before you get on the plane.
Because everyone stepped in there with the socks or the dirty feet.
Yeah. So the plane ride, doesn't get much better. Like, I like how the scene is cut because like John Candy's like snoring on Steve Martin's shoulder, and he opens his eyes, and he's like, what does he say?
I forgot what
I can't remember the line.
I can't either. But you go from a full snore to wide awake, and you open, and then you lock eyes with somebody like 3 inches from your face.
Yeah, and he says something.
Yeah, and then on the other shoulder, the old guy.
Old man he's knocked out.
Yeah,
he's been asleep for.
He could have been dead actually. Hopefully not.
So they get to the airport.
Well, they got rerouted too.
They got rerouted. They go to a different state, Iowa.
Wichita.
Wichita, Kansas.
So Kansas,
okay,
yeah.
So they
supposed to go to Chicago.
Yes.
Rerouted to Wichita.
And he calls home, and she's like, "Why are you in Kansas?" And he's like, "We got rerouted because Chicago gets shut down," which is a normal thing.
Yeah.
Right. Weather's really bad in Chicago.
Absolutely.
Especially in the whole north west. It's all bad up there.
Yeah.
So they get routed to Kansas, which is nowhere near Chicago.
Not even close.
It's way closer to Texas and down south.
Right.
And so they've got to make their way from Wichita, Kansas to
Chicago. Because there's a couple of scenes in the film where they cut to the exterior of the house. Which, by the way, is that not the Home Alone house?
It's not.
But it looks very similar.
It's close.
And Home Alone's supposed to be in Chicago.
That's right.
The only thing missing was the half-circle driveway.
Yeah.
But if you look at the exterior, it looks very similar to the Home Alone house.
That's true.
So he's on the phone complaining to his wife. And while he's done that, he's in line to try and get another ticket out of there.
Yeah.
As soon as possible.
And Ben Stein, that's when we see Ben Stein.
Yes.
And he's like, ladies and gentlemen, it's been closed. It's all been
the whole airport shut down.
Yeah, the whole
no
airport
flights.
shut down. Right.
Yeah.
So what does John Candy come up with?
Well, John Candy, of course, he sidles up to Steve Martin. He's like, well, while you were on the phone with your wife, I was on the phone with this hotel, and it's
a buddy of his.
It's a buddy of his because so John Candy's character sells shower curtain rings.
Shower curtain rings.
Which is such an 80s job to have.
Yeah.
And he says, well...
something we don't care about anymore.
Yeah, at all. He's like, I called this hotel, this guy, I sold him some rings back that he owes me a favor. Got a room for the night if you're up for it.
Yeah.
So they find their way to the hotel.
Yeah. The cab driver is the old man. He's got those big not the cab driver. Yeah, it's the cab driver. The cab driver is like this like 50s rock and roll looking guy. And he's got these big sideburns. Yeah. And it's one of the character actors on Friends.
It is. You're right.
It's Mr. Heckles.
Yeah.
Who dies on Friends.
His name should have been Mr. Heckles in this.
I know, because that would have fit.
It would have fit.
Right. But he's also a friend of John Candy's.
Of course he is.
And he's like, why is it taking so long to get to the hotel? He's like, I thought your friend had never been here before. Thought he wanted to see the scenic route, Such a funny scene. And the cab is tricked out. There's lights on the bottom and
it's
all the outside and it's very strange.
So John Candy's character's name is Dell. He says, oh, well, I told me you weren't from around here, so we took you the long route. And trust me.
Show him the sights.
Yeah, if you've ever been in a cab or a ride share, you want to get right to your destination.
Well, and it's in Kansas. It's flat.
What are you going to see?
Paper.
Yeah. You're not going to see
nothing
anything.
to see. Yeah.
And in the wintertime, all the crops are dead. So if you want to see crops, you're not going to see that. So eventually they get to the hotel, and...
they get the last room in the hotel.
Yeah, because the check-in guy, he says, well, I'll give you a 1-bedroom rate for a 2-bedroom.
Yeah.
So they do that whole thing. This is where Neil and Dell's credit cards get switched up.
Yep.
Because Neil has a Diners Club card.
Yeah.
And Dell has just some whatever.
This is where we see things go from bad to worse.
Yeah.
And they continue to get worse, and they continue to get worse. Because they're at this hotel, there's only one bed.
There's only one bed.
They're both going to sleep in the one bed. Right? John Candy says a funny line about, hey, you want a shower? You want to take a shower? And he's like, oh, not together. And so he takes a shower. While he's in the shower, the very short amount of time that he's in the shower, John Candy grabs his picture frame of his wife.
Yes.
He looks at it. She's not a looker.
No, she isn't at all.
He puts it on the side of the, he's smoking a cigarette in the room.
By the way, that shows you how dated this film is.
Yeah.
Smoking in hotel rooms.
Smoking in hotel rooms.
Yeah.
He has a 6-pack of beer that he puts on the bed, right? Mm-hmm. We see him put a quarter into the thing.
Magic fingers.
And makes it shake.
Right.
That shakes up the beer.
Yes.
Right? Steve Martin gets out of the shower, and there are wet towels everywhere.
I'm going to tell you what.
The sink is covered in wet towels and all kinds of colognes and whatever else.
The entire free space of that sink
taken up,
covered up with all of Dell's stuff. And here's the thing: I've seen this movie a million times.
Yeah.
When I see that particular scene with the wet towels, it makes me want to throw up.
When you get out of the shower, and what do you want? What do you want? You want a full size, a full size fresh towel,
a body towel. Yeah.
What does he get?
The little hand towel,
the tiniest pink hand towel or whatever, and she's got to dry off with that. Yeah. Right. So he dries off.
By the way, have you ever just had face towel to dry off with.
Yes, I have. I've been in that situation. The worst. Yeah.
So when I see that scene, I can relate.
Absolutely. So he comes out and he's like, I've got to get some sleep. He's just so a big term used in the 80s was bushed.
Yes.
I never really said that.
No.
But that was a big 80s thing. You see it you hear it in 80s movies.
Yeah.
Bushed.
Or tuckered out.
Tuckered out was used commonly in my home.
Oh, okay.
But bushed was never used.
Okay.
Or hardly used.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm bushed, and they want to get some sleep.
Now at this point, just from the airplane ride to this hotel, Neil's done with Del. He's already been annoyed through the roof. He doesn't want to put up with him anymore.
Yeah.
So that's why he says, I just want to go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And he lays in bed with John Candy, with Del, rolls over, and Del goes through this whole little process.
Like clearing out his sinuses.
Yeah.
He's like, I've got to clear out my sinuses, and it takes forever.
Yeah. But I love how they let that scene just play on.
Yeah.
They don't cut anything out. They just it's a long scene.
That's a very John Hughes thing to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's normally what he does in his movies.
Right.
To really show how annoying
or
how whatever he's trying to portray, he lets it ride for a while.
It's very effective.
Lets it play. Yeah.
And so, of course, Steve Martin, Neil flips out.
Yeah.
And he goes off on
gets out of the bed.
Yeah, he goes off on this rant.
Starts putting his clothes back on.
Yeah, he's gonna leave.
He's gonna go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he belittles Del to no end.
Yeah.
In a way I've never seen someone belittled in real life.
This part is kind of where I assume it was a improv scene. Because Steve Martin does stand up.
Okay,
right?
He does.
He is very well versed in doing a scene like this.
Right.
A monologued kind of deprecating the other person scene. And I think he just let I think John Hughes just let Steve Martin go.
Okay.
And he does. He goes.
Yeah, he lets him have it for sure in this scene.
And then we learn more about kind of John Candy's character. Right?
Yeah, but right before, so John Candy does kind of speak up for himself, and it gets a real moment. It's an emotional moment because at this point you feel, so you've been annoyed by John Candy as well as
from the
Steve Martin
beginning
has,
of the scene.
But but in this moment you really feel bad for Del.
Yeah.
And right before Del goes off on his explanation as to why he is the way he is, there's a funny moment that Steve Martin does where he says, "You're like the chatty Cathy going, yeah."
That was really good.
And whenever my sister and I watch that scene, we just always die laughing at that one scene.
Yeah, that's a really funny part. But that like to your point, that's when John Candy kind of opens up a little bit more and just kind of explains how he's an easy target.
Right.
And
he's like, "Yeah, you want to pick on me? I'm an easy target. Go ahead."
Yeah.
And he goes on to say, I like me. I like the way I am. Da da da.
Yeah.
And you really feel bad for him, and you don't want to be annoyed by him.
You believe this.
Yeah.
And you're like, you know what? And you kind of side with Steve Martin. Like, oh, okay, I'll get back in bed with you.
Yeah.
I'll lay on the beer
that spilled,
the beer spilled sheets and sleep.
Both Neil and Del are asleep in this bed.
Yeah.
And this guy creeps into this room. This just goes to show you how seedy this hotel was.
Yeah.
Guy creeps in. He goes into Del's wallet, takes all the cash out, and then he, of course, goes...
Del's even talking in his sleep.
Yeah.
And the kid, is kind of chuckling at him. And then he takes all the money out of his wallet, puts it under his hat.
Yeah.
And gets out of there.
And he bounces.
Yeah.
So, which, obviously, that's...
Opens the door with a switchblade.
Which, by the way...
Which is very 80s.
Yeah. Because you cannot do that anymore.
Yeah. So, then they wake up.
So, the next morning, they cut to... John Candy's got his arm all cuddled up and wrapped around Steve Martin.
Slow pan.
Yes.
Over the bed.
Yeah. So there's a whole section of the bed that's empty because John Candy's all snuggled up next to Steve Martin.
Kisses him on the ear.
Well, yeah. So Steve Martin is holding John Candy's hand, and John Candy's mouth is right next to Neil's ear, and so he kind of nibbles and kisses on it a couple of times, and Neil wakes up and he says, "Del."
Yeah. Why did you kiss me on the ear?
And then that they come to. He realizes, this is not my
Del
wife.
Goes, why are you holding my hand?
Yeah. He said, well, where's your other hand?
Where's your other hand?
Well, it's in between two pillows. He's like, those aren't pillows.
And they both jump up. And Steve Martin does this body move that he does in a lot of his movies.
He does.
And it's this little like thing. I can't even explain it.
It's like a girly, like, oh, I got cooties now type little dance
and
he does.
Another one of the reason why like John Hughes lets these things play is they both just did that for a few minutes. Like they were just like, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like they just like, it's like the filth of that. Of the idea of whatever. Such a funny scene. They're getting picked up from the hotel by Dell's friend's son.
Yes.
Okay. And this is what I love about John Hughes characters. Okay. They're always giant characters. Mm-hmm. And something about them is really funny and you see it multiple times. Right? So this guy comes and he does this weird like face thing where he's like snorting his snot in his brain or whatever. Whatever he's doing. Weird.
This is Dylan Baker's character, by the way.
Dylan Baker plays this role, and this is a different role. I've never seen Dylan Baker play.
Extremely different.
Really funny role for him. And he plays like this young redneck guy who is his wife's in the car with a baby. And, she's young and small, and you quickly learn about what kind of relationship that is. Like what's going on there. Because he's like, whatever, I remember her name. He's like, get out of the car and get this trunk.
Yeah, because Steve Martin's like, oh no, I'll put these in the back. He's like, no, she'll come and do it.
We're already picking it up. It's fine. Like we're gonna, So this is the scene that I laughed my ass off in.
I saw you post about
it because of the frozen dog in the bed of the truck. Because they're like, Steve Martin's like, hey, how far is it to the next town? Mm-hmm. And John Candy's like, oh, like 30 minutes. Can't be more than 45, maybe an hour, or whatever he says. He's like saying all these lines. Mm-hmm. And they arrive at the next destination.
Yeah.
And it starts with Steve Martin, like...
Right.
Then it shows John Candy, like frozen, kind of like Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
Like that, which probably was a reference to this movie.
Be.
And then they show the dog, and the dog is like frozen. And I laughed so hard. It caught me off guard completely.
Yeah, that's one of the moments that I laugh at, even though I know it's coming. And the dog is still growling at them, too. He's frozen but growling.
Yes.
Because what happens is before that, when they're still driving, Steve Martin sees a glove.
Yeah.
It's because there's like a bale of hay in the back of the truck with them. Reaches for the glove, and the dog comes from under the hay.
I legit got scared. It was a jump scene.
Yeah, it was.
I legit got scared when that happened.
One of my favorite lines in the film is when they're on that ride, and Neil asks Del, he's like, so how cold do you think it out? Oh, no, he says, so what do you think the temperature is outside? And Del says, 1.
He goes, in John Candy fashion, he goes, 1. And I laughed so hard at that, man.
So this movie has a lot of bits where you're laughing at multiple things in one scene, right?
Yeah, true.
Because one of the best moments of the film is when they eventually get in this rental car and they're driving on the freeway at night. From that whole stretch of about maybe 10 minutes, is probably the best 10 minutes in the whole film.
So many good things come out of that scene. Yeah. This is John Candy and Steve Martin's favorite film of their own.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Which they both have done so many good movies that I watch over and over. Father of the Bride.
See, I would pick Father of the Bride over this, but I mean,
But John Candy, like Uncle Buck.
See, I would pick Uncle Buck over.
I love Uncle Buck.
Me too.
Such a good movie.
Young Macaulay Culkin.
Another John Hughes. What?
Macaulay Culkin? Macaulay Culkin.
Another John Hughes movie.
True.
Uncle Buck. So do you remember when...
If you're already laughing, I know I'm going to love this.
Do you remember when he was trying to get this rental car and he said the F word like so many times?
That was great because, again, you talk about John Hughes.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't happen in John Hughes films. And so what leads up to that is he gets to the airport and he decides to part ways with Del, right?
Yeah.
And so he's going to get a rental car and go his own way, try to figure it out.
Right.
And this bus drops him off like 3 miles away to where the rental cars are, which I've never heard of an airport that has a parking lot of rental cars that far away.
Yeah, it's pretty far away.
Had to be added for community value, and it works. But he gets dropped off. The bus driver says, "Yeah, your car's gonna be slot 75. Your car will be there."
Yeah.
He describes the car.
Yeah.
He walks up to 73, 74, 75. The car's not there.
Nothing there.
And he looks up, and and the camera pans up. No car.
Yeah.
And he quickly realizes, I need to get back to the airport, which is 3 miles away. He looks in the distance, the bus is gone.
Yeah.
Tries to catch up to the bus.
He has to walk across the tarmac to get to the Marathon car rental place.
Right.
You know, and he is pissed.
Oh, he's livid.
He walks up, and the lady from Ferris Bueller, the secretary, she's on the phone.
She's having a grand time on the phone. Whoever she's talking to.
She's talking to a family member.
Obviously.
About Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
She's talking about who, like, she's going to make the crescent rolls or something like that, right?
So Steve Martin is just sitting there, his face, you can just see it.
Yeah.
And he clears his throat, and she looks at him and kind of gives him the finger like, hold on.
He walks into the airport, and he's only got socks on.
Because he wore his shoes out.
Yeah. And his socks are squishing. Right?
It's so nasty.
And, like, again, every piece of this movie is a John Hughes
It's a trope,
thing. It's a trope that John Hughes does. The sound effect of the squishing socks. The dirt all over his face. Like the torn jacket and all this stuff. Like it just screams what John Hughes focuses on. The details.
Like this, you can tell this guy's been through hell already.
Right.
And this journey's only halfway done.
The human condition.
Yeah.
Something that we can all relate to.
Absolutely.
Right? So whenever he showed up at the airport and his car wasn't there, it reminded me of one time I was coming back from a business trip. We flew back from Orlando, and I get to the airport and I have a flat tire.
Oh.
And that night of my trip going from the airport driving back to Tyler 2 hours later was a incredible story. Like, it's crazy how I made it home. And it reminds me of this movie.
Oh, give us the Cliff Notes version.
Well, I mean, like, so my tire was flat. I had to, like, figure out how to get it aired back up. And I went over to the guard stand where this guy was, and I asked, like, hey, I just need some help. You know, like, I need, put my spare on or whatever. And we get the jack, we jack it up, and we put the spare on. And I'm driving out of an airport. I'm frustrated. I get to another part of the airport, and I actually go around the corner too tight, and the tire I just put on hits the curb. And I drive a pretty long ways, and I get all the way back to about 20 minutes from Tyler, and the tire explodes. And I have a friend, Shane Kittle. Yeah. I called Shane Kittle. I said, hey, man, it was like 2 a.m. Yeah. And I was like, you were the only person I can think of that would be awake at this time. And he came and got me. Yeah. And luckily, I got a ride the next morning to my car, and we, got it towed. That's or whatever. Insane. It was just a crazy night. All that to say that I really related to this moment. This is a real moment. So when he gets up to her and she's on the phone, and he's upset. He's visibly upset. Yeah. What does he do?
He's ready to go off. You can tell. He's salivating, ready to go off on her.
It's building.
And we've all been there. No matter what situation you've been in, you get to that point. We've all been there where you've had enough. You're fed up, and you get to that point where you say, whoever the next person is, I don't care who it is, I'm going off on him. I'm letting her loose. Yeah. And so she finally hangs up, and she kind of looks up, and she sees he's upset. She can visibly see it.
Of course.
And he says there's no car in the spot. This is the PG version of that. Oh. Yeah.
So I was about to read a piece of trivia about the scene.
Oh, please read it then.
So the marathon car rental scene is exactly 1 minute long from the time Steve Martin starts his tirade to the time the attendant ends the scene. In that 60 seconds, the F word is used 18 times. The film would have easily been rated PG or PG-13 by the MPAA if it weren't for this one scene. Yeah. Now, when this movie is on TV, do they cut this scene out? See, it's a 1 minute scene. Do they include this scene? I'd never seen this on TV before.
Neither have I.
So
I own the DVD.
Did they do the horrible job of bleeping out the words and making it sound like he's saying something else, but his mouth is clearly saying the F word?
I would hope because of that scene they would just mute the word out, mute it instead of trying to cover it up with another word.
Right, or beep it or something.
Yeah, but because I have the DVD, so I watch the DVD.
Yeah, so it's unedited. Yeah. But man, seeing this movie on TV, I can't imagine how.
But when it happens, you're right there cheering them on. You're like, yeah, let her know, man, because it's not her fault. Yeah. But you gotta let somebody have it. Yeah. And she just happens to be the unassuming victim in this moment.
Man, and he lets her have it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for a full minute.
Yeah. Then he goes out. And so that scene just happens.
Yeah.
And he goes outside to the parking lot attendant. Mm-hmm. What happens then?
Well, because he's trying to figure out, I just need a cab to get to wherever he's trying to go at this point. Because he's not anywhere close to his destination still.
Not at all. Yeah.
And he basically gets kind of snarky with this cab driver, who kind of gives him a little lip. He's like, hey, man, just relax, chill. And he makes a little joke. Mm-hmm. So Neil says, if I wanted a joke, I'd follow you into the John and watch you take a leak. It's a great line.
Yeah.
And so then the cabbie takes offense, obviously, and punches him.
Punches him on to the ground.
Yeah. So when Neil falls, he almost gets ran over again. This time, the driver of the car is John Candy, who did get a rental car.
Yeah.
And at this point, they had kind of went separate ways. They had a little fight.
Yeah.
And you think John Candy's character's gone.
Yeah.
But nope, right back into the film.
Yeah. And in a funny way.
Yeah.
And then Steve Martin gets picked up by that guy that just punched him by his crotch and pulls him back to the curb. Right?
I love that because, John Candy sticks up for him. He's like, hey, man, you hit him and you pick him up. And so, he grabs him by his...
He's like, I'll be glad to.
Yeah.
And leans down and grabs him by the balls.
And so then they cut to John Candy and Steve... They cut to Neil and Del in the rental car driving. Yeah. And Del is so flabbergasted still. It's been hours. He said, man, I've never seen somebody picked up by their gonads before.
And what does Steve Martin's voice sound like?
Like he sucked some helium, right? He's like, I'm talking like this now.
This is when I was still coming off from the F word scene.
Okay.
I was still laughing about the whole thing about him being dragged. And so I'm just continuing. Like, I had to stop eating because I was eating while I was watching this. I had to stop everything because I was just laughing so hard.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but like when I'm alone watching a movie, I laugh out loud.
Oh, man.
Like, I'd let it rip. And I just love it. And I'm just sitting there. And like how you said in another podcast how you had to pause it to like gather yourself.
Yeah.
Like I had to pause this movie to gather myself after these scenes because they're so uproariously funny.
Because it goes from the F-word tirade to the helium voice. Yeah. I mean, and you're almost in tears. And that whole little 5-minute segment.
So funny.
But so that scene leads into, like I said again, my favorite segment of the film is when they're in this rental car on this road.
Yeah. So tell us why that's your favorite scene.
Because in this one car, in this one little section of the film, literally a million things happen.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was like, okay, this happens at the hotel. This happens at the airport.
Right.
This happens at the street, the diner. This all takes place in the car. So Del rented this vehicle, so he decides to drive. Yeah. And
this is what I was really sitting there thinking about the progression of the title. Because the title of the movie is Planes, Trains, Automobile.
Right.
Like, okay, this is the last segment of the movie.
Right.
Right? The third act.
The third act, yeah. So for whatever reason, Neil's driving the rental car.
Yeah.
And John Candy's Del's messing with the seat, moving forward, back.
Yeah.
Which, of course, it's just one of those annoying things that he's doing that Neil can't stand.
Right.
And eventually he says, can you just stop? You're like a child. You're going to break it.
Yeah.
And he says something about
he's got a bad back. Yeah.
Later they switch seats, and Del's driving, and Neil's asleep. He's like, I'm just going to get some sleep. So everything that happens with just John Candy in this scene, to me, is great. It's comedic.
Yeah.
So, and I've been there. He's trying to get out of his jacket because he's smoking a cigarette. He flicks it out of the window, but the wind blows it back in the back seat. And the seats are leather.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get his jacket off because it's getting warm. He doesn't realize what's going on.
And he can't take it off.
Yeah, because he tries to get
It gets stuck on the seat.
Yeah, like the little seat adjuster.
Yeah.
And then he gets his left hand stuck also. So he's like driving the car with his legs. Mm-hmm. And which I've always thought is an amazing skill. My dad can do it.
I've only done that a couple times. And it's like, I don't usually sit that close to the steering wheel, so I can't do it.
Which is weird because, again, me being short, you'd think I would sit closer to the wheel, but I don't.
Yeah.
And I drive very comfortably.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's steering with his legs, and he's got both of his arms tied, and eventually he gets his hand free, and he kind of swerves and does a 360 like I did on the road.
Yeah.
And Steve Martin, ever so calmly, wakes up like he was just had a great beauty nap.
Yeah.
He said, what happened? Where are we? You know, he's so confused.
Yeah.
And John Candy plays like, oh, no, nothing. Just it's fine. Relax.
Yeah. Has no idea what happened.
Yeah. And at this point, John Candy doesn't realize now they're going the wrong way.
Yeah. Steve Martin was convinced to join the production after favoring 2 scenes that he read from the script. The seat adjustment scene and the F-word scene.
That would do it.
Those are the 2 scenes he wanted to do.
I read that script. Sign me up,
Those are both hilarious scenes. You know, like actors are, you know, they get scripts. They get handed scripts. Mm-hmm. Especially big actors like Steve Martin, right? They get handed scripts from producers or from agents or whatever. Hey, read this and see if you want to be a part of it.
Right.
He read those 2 scenes and he was like, I'm in.
That's great.
Yeah.
They're driving the wrong way on this road and have no idea.
Yeah.
Steve Martin goes back to sleep.
Yeah.
And the radio's on, is playing some...
John Candy's singing along with it.
Yeah, trying to stay awake. There's another car that goes up on the right side of them.
Yeah.
And they're going the same direction, which is really kind of weird.
Yeah.
And they roll their window down. They're yelling at Steve.
And you can't really tell what they're saying.
No. And eventually, Steve Martin kind of wakes up. He's like, "What are they yelling at?"
Yeah. And John Candy's like, "I don't know," you know.
Yeah. Because he kind of makes like a little like oh, you're drinking, oh, you're drunk kind of mimicking motion.
Yeah.
And then they both in unison. The couple says, "You're going the wrong way."
Yeah.
And there's 2 18-wheelers barreling down.
And it takes a second for him Steve Martin to realize what they mean.
Yeah. Because he has this look on his face like he's sniffing bad cheese. You know, he's so good at facial.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so then John Candy looks up. Steve Martin looks up first and sees the 2 18-wheelers.
Yep.
And John Candy looks up. And the 18-wheelers, of course, he goes in between both of those cars. And while he goes in between the 18-wheelers, they custom both of them and they're skeletons.
Yes.
And I don't know why, but every time I see that, I laugh so hard.
Which is a John Hughes thing to do. Remember, they did it in Home Alone.
They did.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they get through. John Candy slams on the brakes.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got his, chest he's been traveling with strapped to the back of the vehicle. Mm-hmm. Flips over the car. And everything else falls. You see hubcaps flying off.
It's in the middle of the road.
Yeah, it's chaos.
Yeah.
So they get out of the car, pick up the stuff in the street before the car...
Move it off to the side of the road.
Yeah. And they sit on the trunk and just to take a breather, regroup ourselves.
Yeah. They sit on the chest.
Yeah. When I say the trunk...
Not the trunk of the car.
Oh, yeah.
They sit on the chest with their back to the car.
Of course. And you see the lighting hit their back that this fire is big now. It's blazed.
Yeah.
And so Steve Martin turns around, looks at the fire, doesn't even phase him. Comes back. And then John Candy does it.
Yeah.
And doesn't phase him. And they look.
Yeah.
Then they both look back. And this car is,
it's a loss.
It's done. Yeah. And I love this moment too because up to this point, John Candy's been just harassing Steve Martin and annoying him to no end.
Yeah.
So Steve Martin starts laughing hysterically.
Yeah.
John Candy doesn't understand why, but he starts laughing too.
Yeah.
And eventually he says, "Why are you laughing? What is so funny?" Mm. And Steve Martin says, "You finally did it to yourself." He's like, "It finally happened to you.
Yeah.
This is something that's you got to deal with, not me for once."
Yeah.
And then he says, "Well, how did you rent the car?" And he says, "Oh, well, I gave the guy some shower rings and, he did me a solid." And Steve Martin's not buying. He's like,
"Yeah,
there's no way he would let you rent this car for some shower rings."
Yeah.
And then we get back to the moment where we realize the cars were swapped at the first hotel.
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, actually, I used your credit card."
Yeah.
And which, of course, is it goes right back to Steve every time. You know, he can't win.
Yeah.
And he thinks, "Oh, you stole it." He starts blaming him. You weren't going to give it back.
Accusing him.
Yeah. He's like, "Well, I was going to give it back, but you never gave me a chance to. You got on the train and da-da-da,
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well," and of course, at this point, he had put his wallet in the glove compartment, which is on fire because John Candy says, "Well, I put it back in your wallet."
Yeah.
And that's when he realizes it's in the car. It's on fire.
Yeah.
So they go to the second hotel.
Yeah.
And he tries to pay for the room.
Which is a much better situation.
The hotel is. 'Cause it's got 2 beds.
Yeah.
And, of course, he can't pay for it.
Yeah.
He's got cash. He says, "I've got $17.50 and a nice watch."
The room was like $39 or $49 or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, I've got $17.50 and how about this nice watch?"
Yeah.
Steve Martin says this to the guy. And the guy says, "Okay, cool." And gives him the room. And Steve Martin's gone. He's going to check in.
Yeah.
So then the check-in guy looks at John Candy. And John Candy's like, "Well, I don't have that, but I have $250 and some curtain rings."
Yeah.
And the guy says, "Well, do you have a nice watch too?" And he says no. So he ends up sleeping in the car that's burned down, by the way.
Yeah.
No windows, no top, nothing, no doors, and freezing.
And this is when the kind of like
it starts to get a little more serious at this point. The film, it's not comedic anymore.
This is the socially conscious moment of when Steve Martin's like, man, he feels bad for him.
He does.
You know, even though he doesn't necessarily like him.
Right.
He feels bad for him.
Yeah.
And he wants him to have a decent night of sleep. He's probably going to die.
He would, yeah.
And that's what he says. He's like, you're going to die out there, you know.
So he lets him come in, and then they cut to them having a really good time, actually.
They got into the little tiny bottles of alcohol.
Which always helps.
You know, and, start chatting it up and start talking about some real things. And it turns out to be like a really good time together.
Yeah. It's one of those moments where I've been on road trips that certain moments it goes bad, but you get to a point where you have to make the best of what you have, right?
Exactly.
And this is that scene for sure. And the bed is littered with Doritos bags.
Yeah.
Like I said, the empty little bottles of alcohol. And Neil raises up a bottle because they're talking about different countries based on what kind of alcohols it gets. Rum, tequila, and John Candy says, I'm going to stay in Jamaica. He's got rum, obviously.
Yeah, right.
And Neil says, I want to go to Mexico, so he's got tequila.
Yeah.
And then he raises his glass. He says, to our wives, to the women who are waiting at home for us.
Yeah.
And Doug is just looking at his face that kind of, again, alludes to something that...
something bigger.
Right.
Yeah.
And Steve Martin doesn't catch it then.
Yeah.
And then he goes to the bathroom. Next morning they wake up, they get back in the car, they're driving. This is when... Not McKean. Last name's McKean. What's his
Michael
name?
McKean.
This is when Michael McKean pulls him over because he's the cop.
Yep.
And he says, "You guys think this car is legal to drive?"
Do you feel like this car is fit to be on the road?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the answers John Candy gives are so on the fly.
They're so good.
So many excuses.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Do you know how fast you guys are going?" Well, it's funny you mentioned that, obviously. I was just talking to my friend here about how fast we were going.
Yeah.
But my speedometer burned off in the fire last night. It's just his line delivery. It's so good. Mm-hmm. And so then the cop decides, well, this car isn't, fit to drive. I'm going to have to impound this. And so they end up at a train station, and this is basically the end. And this is where they're going to part separate ways.
Yep.
So Neil finally gets on a train, and this is the home stretch. He's about to be home soon.
Yeah.
Like imminent.
Yeah.
And at this point, they cut back to his family. His in-laws are there. His parents are there. It's Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah.
So this whole trip is taking the course of 2 full days.
Yeah.
Gets on the train, leaves Dell at the train station. He thinks he's going home to see his wife.
Yeah.
And he's starting to reminisce, think about his family. They show pictures of them. He starts to think about this crazy trip he'd just been on, and this adventure with this guy he's never met.
Yeah.
He starts laughing. He starts to put it together. He stops smiling.
Yeah.
And he starts to think about all the lines that Dell has said about his wife, and puts 2 and 2 together and realizes his wife's dead.
Yeah.
So he goes back to the train station.
And he's just sitting there.
He's just sitting there, yeah.
It's so sad.
It's really sad.
It's a little sad scene of him sitting there in the train station by himself. Literally no one else around.
Nobody.
It's
in
the
completely
train
empty.
Yeah.
It's the worst place you want to be on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's when he basically says, how long has she been dead?
Yeah.
And he tells him this whole story about how it happened.
I'm bawling.
Yeah.
By this moment.
Yeah.
I'm
it's
crying.
super sad.
It's super sad.
Like we've been on this whole entire roller coaster ride with them.
And this is what I love about John Hughes movies.
Yeah.
There's that moment that brings it all together.
Yep.
And it's not necessarily a wrap-up moment
Right.
like tying up loose ends. It's the emotional moment.
Yeah.
Because you've laughed, you've been aggravated by this guy
Right.
the whole movie.
Yeah.
And then you have this like endearing, sad moment.
Yeah.
That's so well done.
And you know what? Characters like him, I mean, they really exist in real life.
Absolutely.
You know people who are super annoying, but they have a big heart.
Yeah.
And they're just hurt.
Right.
And they don't really know how to express it.
And the way that he does the music in this movie, like there's the synth and the
Yes.
boom boom like moments, they're so good and they work perfectly.
It works perfectly.
Yeah.
And so he finally decides, Neil decides, you're going to come home with me to meet my family for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And then they cut to them in the street.
Yeah.
And they're both carrying one end of the trunk.
Yeah.
And they've got this like triumphant, uplifting theme playing in the background.
So do you think the trunk is a metaphor?
Ooh. Tell me more about that. That's good, though.
I think that while watching this, I was like, the trunk is the weight of his dead wife.
Ooh. That's good.
That he's carrying around with him everywhere he goes.
And I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I mean, you can interpret it differently, but I think that's the most accurate interpretation of that. Because there's even a scene where they are on the train, and they kind of go separate ways in the beginning. The train breaks down, and he's lugging this thing.
Yeah.
But you don't think it's really that heavy because you've been dragging this thing all across New York in the beginning.
Yeah.
It can't be that heavy.
Yeah.
So it's a metaphor. That's really good. I never thought about that before. As many times as I've seen it.
I mean, seeing it for the first time, I was like, trying to think about metaphors, trying to think about the underlying themes, trying to think about all the things that go into a movie.
Right.
Something super interesting that I just read in the trivia is John Hughes wrote the first draft of this screenplay in 3 days. His average writing time for a screenplay in those days was about 3 to 5 days with 20-some rewrites.
Man.
Yeah. So the general concept gets out of his brain and on the paper in 3 days.
Yeah.
And then 20-something rewrites.
That's insane.
But such a well-written little movie and really, really encapsulates this relationship really well. We've been in situations like this.
Absolutely.
Very relatable.
I feel like after this film, Del and Neil stay in touch and stay friends. I think obviously Del continues to be on the road selling shower curtain rings, but I think they keep in touch after this.
Yeah.
And they become really good friends.
They probably have. I mean, he probably is a uncle to the kids,
right?
Kind of right. Director John Hughes was known for staging improvisational moments for his actors in order to capture a genuine reaction. Since he was not satisfied with the Owen scene introductions after several takes, Owen is the friend's son who drives the truck.
Yes.
He privately instructed Dylan Baker to wipe spit in his right hand just before shaking hands with Neil, Steve Martin's character. Steve Martin, a known germaphobe, was not expecting this as his facial expression contorts in disgust, having just clutched Baker's saliva-slathered hand. The film crew reportedly exploded in laughter as Martin ran off to wash his hands immediately following this encounter. Hughes got the reaction he needed, and the footage was kept in the film.
It's a great moment. I love hearing stories like that.
Yep.
And I love that. I love the idea of being on a set. You're a part of the crew, and something happens that you can't help but laugh. Back to a story that I had when we were working on Neon Days. Again, I was the boom op. There's a lot of funny moments in the film.
Yep.
Where I messed up some takes for the actors and the director. I said, I'm sorry, because for me, as you know, I'm easily entertained. Anything, and I'll start laughing. And there were so many moments where I had to mess up a take because it's so funny and I'm laughing. So I can imagine being part of this crew and these two guys together. You're just laughing at the hilarity that ensues in this film.
Right. John Hughes shot over 600,000 feet of film, almost twice the industry average. The rumored 3-hour version of the film does indeed exist, although not in order. Moreover, it's a mess of footage that would take months, maybe even years, according to Hughes, to transform into an actual film. It is locked away in a Paramount vault, and according to Hughes, most of it has probably deteriorated by now.
Wow. I wonder if a lot of that was old draft footage.
Yeah.
Because if he rewrote 20 times, he probably rewrote a lot of stuff on the fly during production.
On set, yeah. Did you ever go on a bus ride before?
Actually, I have.
With people you don't know?
No.
Okay.
By myself.
The part where they're all singing is totally a bus ride thing to do.
Yeah.
So growing up, I was in choir at church.
Okay.
And we would go on these choir tours. And we would go to these different small churches all around the area.
Yeah.
And we'd sing for the church on a Sunday night or a Wednesday night or whatever.
Okay.
And even though we're a choir tour bus, we always did, and the whole Flintstones thing where they're singing the Flintstones theme song, that's John Candy's favorite cartoon. So he starts that.
There you go.
And then Steve Martin tries to sing a song that nobody knows.
No. It's so classy.
That was so
it's
funny.
Because everybody turns out and looks at him like, what's wrong with you?
It's like a Frank Sinatra-esque kind of thing.
Yeah. That scene reminds me of the scene in The Office where they're on the bus to go, and they're singing that roll call song.
One of Roger Ebert's great movies.
Of course. It has to be. You can't bash a holiday film. I don't feel like that. You'd have some real karma coming your way if you bash a holiday film. Where does this rank on your John Hughes film now that you've seen it?
So now that I've seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I still think Ferris Bueller is my favorite.
Okay.
But I'm going to return to this movie again.
Yeah.
Probably in the next few weeks.
Oh, really?
Because it's a
leading up to Thanksgiving
movie, right? I really, really enjoyed it. It actually made me want to watch some more Steve Martin and John Candy films.
Me too.
And just kind of see where this lands on the spectrum of because I love Uncle Buck. I've seen it so many times.
Same.
Parenthood, Father of the Bride. I've seen those so many times. But as far as my John Hughes rankings, it's up there in the top few. You know, John Hughes didn't make that many movies.
No, he didn't.
In the many years that he was alive, he actually died later than I thought. Remember the other night when we were talking about when you think he, like somebody asked me when did he die, and I thought he died in the 90s.
Yeah.
But he was like in the mid 2000s, something like that, 2007 maybe. I can't remember when he died. But
all of his movies are memorable because of all the reasons that you pointed out in this film.
Yeah, like
they just stand out.
They're all very similar in that they have these moments that you love that you've experienced before.
Yeah,
or something close to that.
Right.
You know, I remember when I first saw Christmas Vacation, which I'm sure we're at some point going to talk about.
Have to.
Because I watched that multiple times around Christmas.
Yeah.
Not just once.
Oh, really? More than once?
It's so funny.
Yeah, it is.
You know, I love putting it on and drinking some wine and just really just living in the moment, you know, in the true Christmas fashion, you know, in my emotions and all that comes with Christmas. Well, guys, I loved Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, as most of you have too.
Yeah.
Mike, you obviously love it.
I'm glad my first pick for you was one that you didn't see before, but you loved.
And my first pick for you was mediocre.
Mediocre. Yeah, it was mid.
Mediocre at best. Anyways, thanks for listening, guys.
And happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. My name is Brad Johnson.
My name is Mike. Mike on the mic. A.K.A. Money Mike. A.K.A. Icy Mike.
So many nicknames. Yeah. Thanks,
Later, guys.
Thanks, guys.